My name is Meredith, daughter of a man whose authority crossed borders without the need for armies. My father ruled more through fear than through the sword, and I grew up understanding that certain matters were not questioned, certain decisions were not mine, and that silence was often the safest form of obedience. From an early age I learned that my value was tied to usefulness, alliances, marriages, stability, never to what I might become by my own choice. It was on a grey morning that they brought a man in chains to the castle. I was on the upper gallery when I saw him being dragged across the inner courtyard, surrounded by armed soldiers as if they were escorting something more dangerous than a man. He was covered in dust and dried blood, his wrists bound by thick chains, shoved without care, without dignity. The way they treated him caused an immediate, almost physical indignation in me. There was no justice or restraint there, only the need to display dominance, to show that this man possessed nothing anymore, not even his own posture. And yet, even wounded, he walked upright. He did not resist, but neither did he bow. He observed everything around him with silent attention, as if every detail still mattered. That unsettled me. I was used to seeing prisoners beg, scream, or surrender to despair. This man did none of that. Only later did I discover who he was. I heard the whispers in the corridors, saw the excessive caution of the guards, the counselors speaking in hushed voices. Then I understood. His name was Aldrich, the most sought-after man among all the kingdoms. The spy who had crossed courts and wars carrying secrets capable of toppling entire thrones. My father had hunted him for years and had finally captured him.
As this story unfolds, grant us your favor, stay within our circle, and keep watch, and tell us, where do you think this path will lead?
He would not be executed quickly. Not out of mercy. My father wanted answers. Names. Roots. Hidden pacts. Aldrich would be kept alive as long as he was useful, subjected to methods my father believed necessary to extract the truth. I knew those methods. The entire castle knew them. And I had always hated them. Keeping a man alive only to tear him apart piece by piece seemed to me a cruelty deeper than any immediate execution. That was why I went down to the dungeons for the first time days later, not out of curiosity nor defiance, but out of refusal. If my father intended to keep him alive to extract information, I would not allow him to be treated as less than human while that happened. I convinced myself it was duty, that prisoners needed to be fed. But deep down I knew I was going down to return something the castle took from him every day. I brought bread and water better than what the guards usually carried, avoiding looking at him for too long. The cell was dark, damp. Aldrich was seated against the wall, the chains fastened to his wrists. When I approached, he raised his face slowly. There was no plea in his eyes, no hatred, only attention. "Meredith," he said softly. I stopped. My name sounded different down there. Displaced. Almost too intimate for that place. I did not ask how he knew who I was. I knew that asking would be admitting fear. I left the bread and water within his reach, and stepped back. Still, when I climbed back up to the castle, I felt that something inside me had shifted, like a door that does not close once it has been opened. I returned the next day. And the next. At first we barely spoke. I went down, left the food, adjusted the water, sometimes a clean cloth. He accepted everything carefully, never advancing, never demanding. He observed everything, the sound of the keys, the rhythm of the guards, the hesitation in my gestures. Little by little I noticed something that did not match the reputation that preceded him. Aldrich was restrained, respectful. He never tried to manipulate me, never asked for anything beyond what I already offered. The first conversations arose from simple things. The constant cold of the dungeon, the rain running down the stones, distant sounds of the castle at night. And the more we spoke, the more the image built around him began to crumble. The ruthless spy gave way to a tired, attentive, deeply human man. He shared the bread as someone who had learned to survive with little. He thanked more with his eyes than with words. He listened with an attention that unsettled me. Little by little, I began to respond more. First with short sentences. then with questions. I discovered that Aldrich served no king. He moved between kingdoms because he believed that truths did not belong to crowns. He spoke without vanity, without trying to justify himself. And the more I came to know him, the clearer it became. He was not what they said. He was not cruel. He was not empty. He was a man who had learned to harden in order to survive, but who still guarded something intact within himself. The bond formed without announcement. A comfortable silence. A gaze that lingered too long. The way he tilted his head when listening to me, as if my words carried real weight. I only realized it when I began to miss the visits. When I started counting the hours until I could go down again. There was a day when I mentioned something my father used to say about me, that I was useful, obedient, predictable. Aldrich looked at me for a long moment before responding. He said I did not seem predictable at all. That there was a restlessness in me, a contained intelligence, a potential someone had deliberately ignored. That struck me more deeply than I expected. My father had never seen me that way. Aldrich, in chains, saw in me something the free man had never wanted to see. After that, something changed between us. He began to worry about me, asked whether the guards were paying too much attention, whether I had been seen. I began to notice his wounds before he tried to hide them. When our fingers brushed while passing the bread, it was almost by accident. Neither of us pulled away immediately. There was no rush, no impulse, only recognition. I began bringing more food, cleaner water. Sometimes I cleaned the dried blood from the interrogations. He never asked, never demanded. He simply accepted, and in his silence there was care. The man everyone called dangerous treated me with more gentleness than anyone else in the castle. That was when Aldrich told me the most dangerous truth. He spoke of hidden alliances, of the pacts that sustained my father's power. He did not pressure me. He did not try to persuade me. He simply trusted me. And in doing so, he placed in my hands a choice I had never had. I began to observe my father with different eyes, to notice cracks where I had once seen only authority. When the death sentence was decreed, I understood that the entire castle had become a prison, for him and for me. That night, I went down to the dungeons knowing there would be no return. When I told Aldrich what would happen at dawn, he closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was no fear of death, only concern for me. Freeing him was quick, silent. The chains fell with a sound that still echoes within me. We fled through the ancient tunnels I had known since childhood. When we emerged into the forest, the cold air of dawn made me understand everything I was leaving behind. Aldrich held my hand firmly. He did not promise safety. He did not promise a future. He simply stayed. Today, as we walk without a certain destination, I know our romance was not born of sudden passion. It was born of humanity restored, of mutual recognition, of the way he saw me whole, when no one else ever had. Loving Aldrich was not an act of impulsive rebellion. It was a decision built step by step, in the shadows of a dungeon, where for the first time I learned what it meant to be seen, and to choose for myself.
If this tale has pleased your heart, grant us your favor and stand beside us.
And if you wish to hear many more, join us and keep watch for what comes next.